The Vietnam War, an important American history lesson that shows us how deprived, immoral, and corrupt government can be when it comes to this human suffering of not only the people in Vietnam, but also our own soldiers, as over 70,000 U.S. American lives were taken in that pointless war that was started with a lie. And sadly, most Americans don't even really know what happened in Vietnam. But to me, it was also a time when journalism was at its forefront, showing the people exactly what happened on the ground there, which led and was a significant part to the war actually ending. The reason we're talking about Vietnam is because today, we are hearing that the Vietnam Association of Victims of Agent Orange, VAVA, has written a letter to a U.S. court asking it to restart a class action lawsuit by Agent Orange victims against American chemical firms, including Monsanto, which the Eastern District Court of New York dismissed in 2004 because Monsanto was able to argue that it was actually the U.S. military that had set the specifications for making Agent Orange and decided on where and how the herbicide was used. Now, because of a recent lawsuit that has awarded people up to $80 million in damages because of Roundup, another herbicide weed killer, and other cases which saw people rewarded in the millions because of wrongdoing that the court and a jury of their peers decided was done by Monsanto. This is sparking up a new discussion whether this will actually go through or not. Now, people need to remember here, the longer under the bigger kind of context here is because the U.S. military was using Agent Orange as a warfare campaign. Officially, the reasons were they wanted to put out this powerful herbicide, and they sprayed it all over Vietnam to eliminate forest cover, which, of course, the Vietnamese guerrillas were using in fighting, of course, the southern Vietnamese soldiers as well as U.S. troops. So imagine the U.S. government literally chemically bombing an entire area to, of course, cause deforestation. Imagine the effects that these chemicals would have on average civilians. And of course, there was plenty of them, with people estimating that 12 million gallons of herbicide were used in that deadly conflict, affecting hundreds of thousands of individuals, which people are linking to, of course, major health problems such as birth defects, cancers, and other deadly diseases, stressing again that there could be as much as 4.8 million victims in Vietnam. A huge number, a huge case. What do you make and what do you think will be the decision, Jason, of this U.S. court in this lawsuit, especially preceding all the negative consequences that Monsanto had to face from their recent Roundup controversy?
All right, so just so everybody understands, Monsanto actually no longer exists. They have been absorbed by Bayer in a $66 billion merger, and that's why these rulings against Bayer and Roundup are quite significant. We've had the second ruling now for $80 million, the original ruling of $290 million for Dwayne Lee Johnson shows hope that companies, especially ones that are in the pharmaceutical and chemical industries, can be held accountable. Now, Agent Orange, although Monsanto is saying was specified by the United States government, was manufactured by Monsanto. That campaign took place for a decade. 10 years they sprayed Agent Orange on civilians in Vietnam. Forget about just the warfare. Forget about, the deforestation for the soldiers. No, civilians were heavily impacted. And now that these two organizations have been won, and we've seen that successful prosecution of Bayer is possible. And by the way, Bayer also had many government contracts, maybe not to do with Vietnam, but many over here at home as well. Let's see what happens. I think that they absolutely deserve it. When you see some of these pictures, Luke, of what has happened to some of these children who are a generation out, it is extremely disturbing. And the groundswell is still being felt today in Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, we can't even show you some of the horrible birth defects and some of the horrible medical problems that people are facing in Vietnam because the videos and the pictures are too grotesque to show you. And it's upsetting, to say the least, seeing those photos because you know, the New York court ruled in 2004 that, you know, putting herbicides, spraying herbicides did not constitute a war crime. But what else did the U.S. military think was going to happen when they're spraying tons and tons of chemical solvent that they knew would cause deforestation, and they were spraying it everywhere? They're spraying it all over civilian populations. How can they not expect some damage, some long-term effects not to affect human beings? And of course, obviously, they did. They just, I believe, chose to see a blind eye. The Nation really puts things into perspective, and I really have to congratulate them on doing a good journalism here, because it's very rare that we see this. But they have an article here that says, "Why don't Americans know what really happened in Vietnam? Instead of confronting the truth, we scrubbed the record clean, and we're paying for it in Afghanistan and Iraq today." And I think Afghanistan is the modern day age Vietnam, with, of course, less casualties, less numbers. That's also because of automation and robotics. But in the large sphere of things, the United States is still entangled in many pointless wars, just like the Vietnam War was. And again, we were sold a pack of lies by the government in Vietnam. The whole thing, it was a false flag that started predominantly this conflict at the Gulf of Tonkin. People need to understand this real history, and I think it's an important learning stepping stone in seeing what's happening in American foreign policy, which, again, the media has absolutely taken an 180-degree back turn to what they were during Vietnam to what they are now. In Vietnam, they were on the ground. They were reporting Americans getting shot, killed, injured, wounded. They were filming a lot of the innocent bystanders getting affected by war. And these images led to, of course, a big anti-war movement, led to the ultimate stepping stones, which was one of the factors that ended this bloody, stupid, pointless conflict that was really, really just proved absolutely pointless. And still, this should be one of the most important stepping stones, learning lessons. Most Americans don't even know anything about it. And I believe that's absolutely sad, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to make one more point here that, you know, this company is still so toxic today that New York recently called for Monsanto's toxic pesticides, Roundup and others, to be completely banned from its city parks. So despite all these rulings, a lot of this stuff is still being used. And finally, people in New York are saying, okay, it's time to back off. It's time to get rid of this stuff. But remember, Monsanto, absorbed by Bayer. Bayer seems to be taking on the financial responsibility. It is encouraging. We've seen these rulings, but I don't think it's out of the realm that they should be held accountable for what they did to an entire generation of Vietnamese citizens, Luke.
Absolutely, and I think there does deserve to be at least a hearing, and shouldn't be thrown out before there actually is some actual bigger evidence presented that hopefully we could get a look at. Because again, we can't show you the grotesque, gruesome results of what happened by this U.S. policy, but holy cow, does it tug at your heartstrings when you actually do see them. Journalism used to be about showing you those images. Now YouTube will automatically just take you off and make sure no one sees it. That's the kind of world we're living in right now, a scary world where it's even difficult to show you the bigger truths of what the government is actually doing. Yeah, that's my take. You want to close it off here, Jason?
Yes, sir. We are doing 4 videos a day across 2 platforms, 3 on Pulse Change, 1 on We Are Change every single day. Make sure to subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, share this stuff on social media, because without you guys, nobody's going to see this stuff. Most importantly, however, when it comes to your neighborhood, when it matters to you, get out there and be the change you want to see in the world.